Please take out the note sheets that I gave you in class today to replace the 214 to 219 notes that you were working on the night before. Had the wrong questions. This one should have the the four boxes with where you're reading a section, and then where you've read a section, and then you've filled in a question that you have or that you can develop to get somebody to answer based on what you've read. What I'd like to do in this video is give you a quick overview of the build-up to the War of 1812, and then just a real quick summary of the end of the War of 1812. We're looking at, within our Unit 3 on transitions, we're looking at a transition in foreign policy, and we're going to take a look at a little bit of the history of where we had been and then how we get to this War of 1812. And so what I'm going to start with here are just a few images of what we spent a good deal of class today talking about, and one of our vocab terms, impressment. If you see this, you have a British ship, an American ship. The Americans are being taken into service by the British. So we have impressment, another image of impressment, yet another image of impressment, and then here's another example of impressment. And so when you look at these four images, and we can take a look at these in class again tomorrow, we have the central issue that is going to lead to the War of 1812. What I'd like to take a look at here is the the bell threw me off there. I just want to look at a brief history of impressment. This is not anything that you would need to commit to memory. You'd be able to refer back to this video or the notes that you take here. You don't need to memorize this, but I just want to stress that this isn't something that was new going into the War of 1812, or even with the way we talked about it today with Thomas Jefferson. This is something that goes back to 1794. We have had a series of events going back and forth between England and France over their inability to recognize our neutrality. And here you see 1794, we had the Jay Treaty, 1797, the XYZ affair and the quasi-war with France that we talked about with the Sedition Act. 1807, which is what we focused on, and I'll review that here in a minute again with the Embargo Act, and then ultimately we're going to talk about this war that we have with England over impressment. The question for the United States when it comes to impressment is this question of legitimacy. When we had the quasi-war with France after the XYZ affair, this is what Hamilton was really harping on, was this idea of, if the United States is going to be subjected to impressment, it's really a question of legitimacy. The other countries in the world have not yet acknowledged us as an independent country. They don't recognize or respect our independence. And so the question that we end up with is, why couldn't America protect itself? And we went over some of those in class today, and you've read a little bit about those when you look at Jefferson and his idea of governing and how he kind of gutted the military. When England and France continue to have a war, when their war is heightened, that directly impacts the United States because impressment increases. And what I have here, this idea here, the Chesapeake affair, which is not in your vocab, but it's a good example of just how far impressment was going. No longer where the example I gave you today, where these things were happening in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, if not closer to Europe. The Chesapeake affair happens, really close, just off the American coast. It's almost like they're coming over here to impress our sailors. When we protested this, England gave a weak apology, but they don't. But they had no intent on stopping. They apologize. Jefferson's reaction is what I want to focus on for the first part of this, and it should go with your question of embargo. Jefferson's reaction, as we talked about in class today, was to stop the trade. The logic being that if we don't send the ships, they cannot be impressed. Well, what we're going to end up with when Jefferson leaves office and Madison becomes president is we're going to have a continuation of impressment. And what you might have in that first question there might have something to do with Macon's Bill number 2, as it was a part of the text. But I just want to summarize Macon's Bill number 2. And what it was an offer to England and France. In the aftermath of the Embargo Bill, the Embargo Act, which was hurting the American economy, the government's compromise was to pass a law which said, England and France, we are willing to open up trade with you again. If either one of you promises to respect our rights and not continue impressing us, we will trade with you and not with your enemy. Well, Napoleon took the deal. And so we promised to trade with Napoleon, not with England, because Napoleon promised to not continue impressment. So Madison embargoed England. We trade with France, and both countries, France and England, continue to impress our soldiers. Or I'm sorry, not our soldiers, our sailors. Napoleon never lived up to his promise, never really intended to. So it seems like they're both equally our enemy. What is troubling to England, though, is that now we appear to be their enemy, right? Because we are aiding France, we are trading with France, but we're not trading with England. And so England begins to gear up toward defending itself against what now they view as an enemy. And so England wants to weaken America. And one of the ways that they do this is by arming Native Americans on the frontier. And this we view as a violation of our neutrality. It's a violation by England. You have the second question on this reading is under the section on Warhawks Demand War. And let me just quickly summarize the Warhawks. We will talk about two vocab terms in class tomorrow, and that is midterm elections, which will be really timely considering we have to see what our Congress does regarding the shutdown and the debt ceiling tonight. Midterm elections might be a timely conversation tomorrow. And also this idea of freshman class of representatives. In 1810, there was a midterm election. And this new freshman class of representatives are going to come in with an eye on legitimacy, meaning that they are campaigning and winning their seats saying that they wanted to go to Congress to get the United States to defend itself against impressment. And when they get there, that's exactly what they do. They put a lot of pressure on President Madison to not follow through on an embargo, but actually defend the United States, end the blockade that England had put on us, and we can talk about that term of blockade, to proactively go and gain Canada, so expand our territory, and destroy Indian resistance. So these Warhawks are intent on a few things. Right? England had retaliated against our trade with France by putting up a blockade, so they continued to stop our trade. We want to fight England to stop that. England still had possessions in North America and Canada. We wanted to gain those, and England was arming our Native Americans, or the Native Americans on our frontier. We wanted to destroy that resistance. And the Warhawks, leading Warhawks, we have Henry Clay is a leading Warhawk, John C. Calhoun is a leading Warhawk, and James Madison is the President of the United States. And in 1812 and into 1813, late 1812 into 1813, the Warhawks convince President Madison to go to Congress and ask for war, and they are more than happy to give it to them. The truth is, we were not a good match for England. The lucky thing for the United States was that England was also fighting France. So our first efforts were to try to go and gain Canada, which we are pitiful at. We have no ability to attack. Our army isn't strong enough. In fact, England makes gains. We lose Detroit and Chicago for a bit. During 1813 and 1814, the momentum will change in our war with England depending on how England was doing against France. So let's put it this way, and this will be an easy way to remember it. You should put this on the right-hand side for sure. As Napoleon goes, so goes the United States, meaning when Napoleon is having success in Europe, the English have to concentrate their efforts there, and we have less of an English presence in the United States fighting us. However, when Napoleon is not doing that well, we get a lot more of the brunt of the English forces, and we don't do that well. And we see, Washington is seized, the White House is burned, Baltimore is attacked, and the United States is really close to losing this war. Skipping through some of the details, okay, what I want to focus on in class tomorrow, and we'll do this in class tomorrow, is the last 2 points on this on this note sheet, which is the Treaty of Ghent and the Hartford Convention. So what we're going to start class with tomorrow is me looking at and getting you to share with me the questions that you wrote there, and we're going to use that to propel us into a conversation about the end of the War of 1812. So hopefully you're watching this. I would like for you to fill out the form underneath this video, answering some of the questions that I'm asking you there. You also need to be sure that you bring in your reading notes ready to go tomorrow. And so when you come into class tomorrow and I ask for volunteers, what I'm asking for is I'm looking for you to share with me the questions that you've developed under the Treaty of Ghent and the Hartford Convention. See you in class tomorrow.